Super Bowl 59. Welcome, football fans. It's Mitch, and I'm here with my AFC NFC Championship preview, breaking down the matchups, the X factors, and everything that will dictate the winners of the conference championships this Sunday. Which teams will play in the Super Bowl? Which teams will represent the AFC and the NFC in the big game? Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to OwnersBox Fantasy for more NFL content just like this. And let's get to it. Let's break it down, beginning with the NFC Championship game. And I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments who you're picking to win the NFC. The Commanders or the Eagles? We got a full-on NFC East championship game. It's a season split, 1-1. Each team won the game at home. The Commanders with a cardiac comeback versus the Eagles in the second matchup, and Philadelphia on prime time pounded the Commanders. So it's a third game. This is gonna be fun because I could see it going a couple different ways in this matchup. Philadelphia is a really weird team because they're winning these games. They're physically dominating their opponents, but it feels like they're sloppy. It feels like their quarterback is not doing a thing to help them in their effort. And the complete opposite is true about the Commanders. Their offense is on cue, the tempo, the time of possession, accuracy, everything about their offense with Jaden Daniels right now, it's perfection. The Commanders have an opportunistic defense, while the Eagles have probably the best defense in football, especially against the pass this season. They have been first in net yards per attempt, first in yards allowed. They're a top 2 defense in EPA across the board in pretty much any metric. Philadelphia's defense has been dominant, which is definitely something to talk about because the Commanders have played 2 of the worst defenses in the playoffs so far. They have looked fantastic offensively against Tampa Bay, who, yeah, they could stop the run, but they were very flawed in the secondary, and we saw that in the wild card round. Jaden Daniels was also able to pick up some yards with his legs and keep the offense on pace to go for a lot of fourth downs, convert a lot of fourth downs, and their receivers were able to win matchups and get open down the field. They also just squeaked that one out, pretty much because of the fumble that the Bucs had in that game. In the other game, the Lions, we just saw how many injuries have taken shape and destroyed Detroit. Like, their secondary, they like to play man, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't rush Daniels. They couldn't really even stop the run without Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil. The pieces were just not there for Detroit to shut down a good offense. They needed to win through their offense, and they turned it over. And I give Washington a lot of credit for getting the lead, sustaining the lead, and forcing Goff into mistakes. They deserve to be here. But at the end of the day, Philadelphia is a different animal. Philadelphia has a much better pass rush than either team they have played. And now the Commanders aren't going to have Sam Cosmi, one of their guards, who has played the 4th most pass blocking snaps in the NFL this season. He's one of only 11 guards this year to allow 1 or less sacks on the season. He's a critical piece to their success up front and protecting Daniels. And now they have to play Jalen Carter, one of the best, if not the best D-tackle I've seen all season. The guy is an absolute monster at just wreaking havoc against offensive lines and quarterbacks. Nolan Smith is playing really well. I feel like Philadelphia has the front with athleticism, youth, power to really give Daniels a ton of fits and really funnel the pass rush and contain Daniels so that his legs aren't really as critical of a factor. But that being said, they have been very critical in the matchup so far this season. The Commanders won the game where Daniels had 81 yards rushing, and when they lost, he had 18 yards rushing. See how the numbers were reversed there. So Daniels being able to run or not is a big factor. Guys like Zach Bond, Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, these guys are very athletic, and I feel like they pose a threat to Daniels that we didn't see for sure in Detroit. And Tampa Bay, they're just so kind of big in the middle of their defense, and they mostly struggled with the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 yard gains, not necessarily the explosives, but their secondary was a bigger issue to me, and that's not the issue in Philadelphia. Quinyon Mitchell will be back. Darius Slay's a vet of the game. game. Cooper DeJean has been a rookie sensation. Their safeties are solid, so I'm not too worried about the Eagles covering the Commanders in this game, especially when it comes to Terry McLaurin, who I feel like, yeah, he should make some plays and some catches, but he's not going to go crazy. This is certainly the best tandem of corners on the perimeter that he has played all playoffs, and Quinyon has done a great job against him in 2 matchups. I really look at this and I say, if Philadelphia gets the lead, it's over. Like, Jalen Hurts did leave the game the second time they played. They were up 21-7 in that game. People forget about that. And the Cardiac Kids came back and they made some special plays. Zacchaeus made one of the most incredible plays, right? They were really, really good down the stretch defensively at getting the stop that they needed, but that was against Kenny Pickett. So, like, how much can you take from that? Because Pickett doesn't bring the physical dimension of Jalen Hurts, right? And that game really didn't matter all that much to the Eagles at the time. Not really, right? Like, the first matchup, the Eagles were up 26-10. So they've gotten massive leads in both games. For Philadelphia to lose and for the Commanders to upset the Eagles, the Commanders are going to have to get the lead in this game. In the first game, they did get a 7-0 lead. They did get a 10-3 lead. Elliott did miss a field goal in the first game on the first possession that allowed Washington to get the early lead. But it feels like at a certain point, the physical element of the game is going to overwhelm Washington. Philadelphia's O-line and their run game on paper is a terrible matchup for the Commanders. The Commanders are bottom 3 in yards per carry allowed, bottom 3 in yards before contact allowed. They're terrible against the run. And Saquon and the Eagles have probably the most dynamic, explosive running game in football. And if the Commanders sell out to stop the run, they're going to be in trouble. With how much they play man coverage, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert are 3 mismatches the Eagles can pose. And when you play a lot of man, it's actually easier for Hurts because he can rather take off and run or find one of his options rather down the field or on a quick slant or RPO or something, right? So Kellen Moore should have enough answers to this Dan Quinn defense that he should know very well, right? Like, Dan Quinn was in Dallas at one time. Kellen Moore may have a connection to that as well, just saying. So I feel like Saquon Barkley is going to have a huge game. He's had 100 yards in 8 of his last 9. He's had 145 yards in both games against the Commanders. And Daniels, his ability to run should definitely be limited by the Eagles, but I could see maybe a little Brian Robinson success. I was slightly shocked by how well Kyron Williams was able to run the ball for the Rams against the Eagles. That was one of the surprising elements of the game. Now, the Commanders and the Rams run the ball differently. The Commanders are much more from the gun, and the Rams are much more from under center. So maybe there are some differences there that may be enough for the Eagles to slow down Robinson and Daniels, because Robinson previously had not been playing very well. So it was a shocking outing there. But I just think that this is just an overwhelming matchup from a physical standpoint at the line of scrimmage, from a pass rush for the Eagles. They have the secondary to cover the Commanders, but it's really difficult because the Commanders feel like they're playing smoother, like not simpler, but silkier football. Like, they're just the smoother team. They have so much confidence. The Eagles are playing ugly, gross ball, but it's effective. They're playing defense first. They're playing run first. And I don't necessarily see the Commanders defensively or the Commanders as a team as the one that's going to slow them down in the way that they want to play. And the Eagles have shown that when the game featured Jalen Hurts, they have outscored the Commanders by a large margin and dominated these games. So nothing in the first 2 matchups really tells me the Commanders are going to win these games, despite them winning one of the games in a comeback. I just don't see that happening in the Link, in Philadelphia, in the NFC Championship. They're going to have to get the lead. They're going to have to win time of possession. And in order for the Commanders to win, I think it is through that avenue. Get an early lead, force Philadelphia to play on their heels, force them to play left-handed, force them to throw a lot, force Hurts to be the guy that's making most of the plays and decisions and not Saquon Barkley, force Kellen Moore to get in his bag in a passing perspective, force A.J. Brown to not read a book on the sidelines and be focused to catch the ball, and then you get after Hurts, throw him off with a blitzer 2, throw him off with a simulated pressure, a little coverage trick. Maybe you can get him to throw a pick. He has not been playing well, and he could be a little banged up entering the game. So the Commanders will have their opportunities, but I just feel like Saquon and this O-line and that D-line are too overwhelming for the Commanders to overcome. And even if they fall behind just a little bit, the Eagles, I think they're quickly going to be able to make it up because of the explosiveness they have in the run game. And also, if the Commanders are not stopping that run, they're going to have to commit, and it's going to open up the easy shots down the field for 2 of the best receivers in the league in football. So I like the Eagles here. I think the Commanders are in real tough. I'm going to say that the Philadelphia X factor for me are those receivers. Like those receivers on the outside. A.J. Brown dominated early. I do feel like there's going to be a point where the Commanders are going to say, okay, Jalen, beat us. And I don't necessarily think that Jalen is the one that's going to be beating them, but A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, I know that they're not the smallest of names. This isn't a niche matchup, but this is one that could break open the game for Philadelphia and allow them to dominate, because Washington's not going to be able to stop Philadelphia running the ball straight up. That's going to allow opportunities. And if those receivers make Washington pay, the game's over. Like there's nothing they can do. So A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith would be my X factors for the Eagles. And on the flip side, I think the Commanders, it's the start. It's kind of a weird thing to say. So what's going to allow them to get a good start? It's the game plans by Cliff and Dan Quinn. I think it's perhaps a couple game plan plays, whether it be a Daniels run, a screen, a little makeshift swing pass to Austin Eckler in space. Defensively, I think the interior of the line has to hold up, that being Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. And I also think that rush plan of Dan Quinn to really press the pocket and force Jalen Hurts into some awkward throws, some throwaways, and taking sacks. Hurts likes to look to run, and if you can press that pocket, the Rams showcase that you can get him on the ground and you can sack him many times. He is willing to take a sack. So I would say those D tackles in the inside, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, can they make an impact at indenting that interior run game and also making an impact on Jalen Hurts of forcing him to move and forcing him to get antsy in the pocket to perhaps throw an interception or just take a bad sack at a critical moment. So a combination for the Commanders and a combination for the Eagles. But ultimately, I just think there's too many paths for Philadelphia at home to win this game. And it could be cold. There could be weather involved, which the Commanders all season and the rookie Daniels, who played at LSU, hasn't really dealt with in his entire NFL career. So I'm going to take the Eagles -6, and I will take the Eagles to win. I think that they win by 7 to 10 points. I don't think it will be a blowout. I have too much respect for the Commanders coaching staff and for Jaden at this point for me to say that, but I think it'll be similar to the Rams game, where the Eagles, they just don't look great. They don't look promising necessarily from our eyes, but they're still too good physically to lose the game. So I'm going to take Philadelphia to advance to Super Bowl 59. In the AFC Championship, the Kansas City Chiefs are looking to three-peat, and in their way is the Buffalo Bills, a team that they have beaten 3 times in the playoffs. 3 times in the Mahomes-Reed era, they have beaten Buffalo. And for Josh Allen, this is a legacy game. In order for him to get to his first ever Super Bowl and potentially win a Super Bowl, he has to get past Pat. So it makes for a really good storyline. It's Brady Manning, the new generation. I kind of think so. And I'm really looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be one of the most hyped, fun experiences as a football fan in years. It's up there with the best of the best matchups. I have said that I believe this is Buffalo's year, and I picked Buffalo before the playoffs to win the Super Bowl, and I picked them to beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. And I've also said before that I thought that the Baltimore-Buffalo game would decide the Super Bowl champion, and I am not swaying my opinion. I do think Buffalo will win this game, but let's get into why I think Buffalo will win this game and how Kansas City can prove me wrong. So first of all, the first game matters. They played back in week 11. It was in Buffalo. The Bills won that game 30-21, okay? A 9-point win, a 2-score victory where the Bills sealed it with an epic play of the year candidate, Josh Allen running through the entire Chiefs defense on, I think it was 4th down, for a touchdown. In that game, both teams had injuries. For the Chiefs, they missed their number 2 corner, Watson. Their number 3 receiver, Hollywood Brown, had yet to be activated. Their running back, Pacheco, had yet to be back from his IR stint. And they also had Morris at left tackle. Now they have Joe Tooney. For the Buffalo Bills, they were missing Spencer Brown, one of the best right tackles in football. Matt Milano, arguably their top linebacker and defender. Dalton Kincaid, their best tight end. And Keon Coleman, arguably their best perimeter receiver this season. So both teams had a lot of injuries, but I would actually say that the Bills had more significant injuries. Spencer Brown at right tackle is a huge one. Matt Milano at linebacker, he's dinged up going into the AFC Championship apparently. currently, but that's also a huge injury. And Dalton Kincaid, considering the opponent and how bad the Chiefs have been against tight ends, is also major. I think Watson would be the biggest one for the Chiefs, and having another corner out there to defend the passing game against Josh Allen and play more man coverage is certainly a factor in this one. I think a big difference maker in this game is the run game. Can the Chiefs find a run game in this one? And can the Bills continue to bully at the line of scrimmage? Because the Bills have been the most physical team that I've seen in this Bills era, this McDermott-Allen combination era. I haven't seen them be this physical. They bullied the bully at some points, especially the first half of that game in Buffalo against the Ravens, which was extremely impressive. They slowed down Derrick Henry early in the game, just enough, and they ran the ball like really well against arguably the best run defense in football. They were at least number 1 in yards per attempt allowed, the Baltimore Ravens. So they have gone against, in the playoffs, 2 of the best run defenses in the league, Denver and Baltimore, and they've ran the ball effectively with James Cook, Davis, and Ty Johnson. In the first matchup, they didn't run the ball at all against Kansas City. It was pretty pathetic, honestly. Now, Spencer Brown was not out there, and they tried to run the ball quite a bit to the right, which has kind of been their thing all year, and it wasn't that effective. You know, they only had 3.6 yards per carry or less from all 3 of their running backs, including James Cook. Allen did have 12 carries, but he did have a pretty productive day, including 4 carries on the game-sealing possession. I could see Josh Allen getting like 15 carries in this game, like 10 to 15 carries in that range in this game. I definitely think he'll be involved as a runner, as he always has been against Spagnuolo, and sometimes you can get some gashing runs from Josh because Spagnuolo loves to blitz, and when you do blitz, it does open up possibilities to get caught in the running game, especially from the quarterback when you have that extra man involved as a blocker. Now, one of the areas here that I think will dictate the game is the running game. I have not been impressed by the Chiefs running game all year. I think it's one of the worst running games I've seen from this era of the Chiefs. Kareem Hunt has been the better running back in my opinion. I thought he had a solid game against the Bills the first time around, but since moving Joe Thuney to left tackle, it feels like the Chiefs have not been able to run the ball at all against really anybody, and the Bills are pretty solid, especially against like below average running games. Like, they're bad against like really good running teams that know how to put a fullback in the game, get extra big bodies in the game, and just overpower you, but that's not exactly the team that the Chiefs are, and they don't exactly have a lot of explosion in their running game. So an X factor and a way for the Chiefs to prove me wrong and win this game is to outrush the Bills and to effectively stop Buffalo's running game, which really nobody to this point in the playoffs has been able to stop, including 2 of the top 3 run defenses in the league. So in my opinion, I do think the Bills will have more time of possession. I think they'll have the ability to keep the Chiefs out of their game, which is long drives, a lot of plays, a lot of possession. If the Bills can effectively do that, they will win this game. If the Chiefs are able to run the ball, and if the Chiefs are able to control the clock and keep Josh on the sidelines, it's going to have to fall on Josh's ability to throw, where they could, possibly still win Buffalo, but it's going to be a lot more difficult because the way the Bills have been playing lately is they like to kind of dink and dunk, throw their screens, and then effectively open up a defense for shots down the field. So I think that the run game is absolutely an X factor, and I would honestly put Kareem Hunt as an X factor for the Chiefs. Kareem Hunt is definitely an X factor. Another player that I feel is an X factor for the Chiefs is Xavier Worthy, who had a really good game against the Bills the first time and could have had well over 100 yards if he would have kept one of his feet in bounds on one of the deep completions that was incomplete in the game. Worthy is a problem for a team like the Bills because the Bills typically are a zone team, and when you're typically a zone team, your corners are not that fast, and Worthy can create explosion through his speed, through his ability to catch a screen, his ability to go on jet sweeps, his ability to go in motion and create a leverage through that motion, and his ability to fly past defenders down the field in man coverage. The Bills did play a lot of man coverage in that game the first time around, and it was effective in slowing down the Chiefs for the most part and for most of the game. But Worthy is one of those guys that if you give him a step, he's going to burn by you as one of the fastest players we've ever seen. So he is a problem, especially if Benford is not ready for this game. I know he's a little bit injured, but I think he'll be okay. But Christian Benford did mostly lock up D-Hop in that game. I will be intrigued to see what they do with the matchups in the secondary and if the Bills choose to play as much man as they did. Honestly, I think that isn't a bad option against the Chiefs because their receivers aren't exactly amazing at separating. Even Kelsey is old and he's mostly found a lot of his space against zone, especially against the Texans. But I'll be intrigued to see if the Bills do test them a little bit with man coverage, especially on big downs, on third down. The Bills did use a little bit of a 5-man rush and a little bit of a spy out there at times to really contain Mahomes from running. And I think the Bills are one of the better teams at at containing Mahomes from doing that when they play quite often. They have so much familiarity in these coaching staffs and in these games, so much crossover and carryover from past matchups. I mean, there's really not a lot that either team hasn't seen at this point, right? They played in the playoffs last year. They played in the AFC championships. They played in divisional rounds. They play every regular season. They're so familiar. There's not a lot of tricks that Andy Reid can bring. Joe Brady is going to have another opportunity in these playoffs to bring a sprinkle or two to this game plan. I think an area where the Chiefs are going to have a tough time is on third down, containing Josh Allen, both in terms of his legs and his arm, because it felt like Allen had a lot of success when the Chiefs did decide to play zone with his arm. But when they decided to play man, that's always a difficulty because Allen is going to be able to run. He's a problem when he gets out in space. On top of that, you've got a lot of different matchups, including now Coleman and Kincaid added to the mix of what they saw in week 11. Curtis Samuel had a really nice game in the first matchup. I think he's a low-key, props type of guy to look out for. I think Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman are also intriguing to see how many plays they can make on the perimeter. Who will Trent McDuffie cover? Will it be Khalil Shakir, who's kind of been the third down chain mover and the go-to guy for Josh all season? And he had a very good game against the Chiefs the first time around. And McDuffie didn't really seem to have, Spags didn't really know what to do with him. He didn't really know where to put him, who to cover him with, who to put him on. It's not as clear as the Texans, where you put him on Nico Collins and you call it a day, right? The Bills have so many different ways to beat you, and they more so beat you with concepts than they do with players. Their running backs are also problems in the receiving game, and their tight ends are going to be problems. Dawson Knox had a decent game against the Chiefs the first time. Dalton Kincaid is going to perhaps have a legacy game here. He could go for 6 or 7 catches, and I wouldn't be shocked. I think he's going to be a complete mismatch in this game, especially if the Chiefs do decide to play a lot of man coverage. Ty Johnson and James Cook, we've seen them before have success. James Cook had a really good regular season game against the Chiefs last year, and that was a lot due to the Chiefs playing a little bit of man and their linebackers being exposed to those running back matchups. So I really do like the matchups that the Bills have in the passing game because they have so much depth. It's just very hard for the Chiefs without a L'Jarius Sneed this year to make that happen. And you throw in the fact that the Chiefs pass rush is probably going to struggle. Looking back at that first game, the Bills were able to pick up Spags blitzes with no problem, and the Chiefs really struggled to get any pressure on Josh. Now that might change a little bit just in terms of it's on the road now, so it might help Chris Jones for the playoffs, but with Spencer Brown back, I really don't see the Bills having any issues protecting Allen in this game. While on the flip side, I think the true X factor for Buffalo is their edge rushers. Von Miller on big downs coming from that left side against Jawan Taylor, the fall starter, and then also on the other side, AJ Epinesa and, Gregory Rousseau. Those guys, Gregory Rousseau had a good game the first time around. Now he'll be facing a different type of matchup against Joe Thuney than he did Morris the first time, but those guys are going to be able to get pressure on Mahomes, kind of like Will Anderson did. If they can win this game for Buffalo. One big sack, one critical strip sack, one critical hit that forces an interception. By the way, the last time Mahomes threw a pick, he threw 2 against Buffalo. So the Bills certainly felt like they had a good plan in coverage for the most part. They were able to get a decent amount of pressure. The Chiefs didn't overwhelm them running the ball. And I do think the Chiefs are going to have to be more patient with the running game in this one. I do think that the Chiefs are going to have to hopefully get better pass protection from Joe Thuney than they did Morris in the first game. And Kelsey, Worthy, and the others, Marquise Brown, are going to have to step up big time to separate if the Bills do play more man in this game. Now, I ultimately like the Bills because I think they match up with the Chiefs as well as any team in the league. I think they're actually right now the more physical team. I think they run the ball better. I think their passing game is just as good in the quick and screen game, but they're much better down the field at attacking and explosives. I think that their pass rush is arguably better than the Chiefs. The only real area that I like the Chiefs more is I liked Spag's scheme. I like their secondary, but to me, I just think the Bills' ability to get more in the run game, Josh being an animal in the run game himself, the motivation factor is critical here too. And I just don't think the Chiefs' offense is all that good. I don't think it's all that good or reliable or consistent. I think McDermott has a fairly good handle on it. And I don't think the Chiefs' defense that allowed 10 first downs on third down against CJ Stroud and one of the worst O-lines in football is going to be able to get Allen off the field enough. So ultimately, I think the Bills pull off the small road upset versus the Chiefs. And I think they advance to the Super Bowl. The X factors being that pass rush of the Bills, if they can't get to Mahomes, it's going to be a long day. No matter who's playing out there out wide, if you get time for Mahomes, he's going to make magic happen. And for the Chiefs, I would definitely say that Worthy and Hunt are those playmakers that need to step up for the Chiefs, right? So those are my predictions. Those are my picks. Bills to win in an upset and obviously cover. Eagles to win and cover. We're going to get Bills and Eagles in Super Bowl 59. Let me know your thoughts on my breakdown and my prediction in the comment section below. Let me know if you agree or you disagree. Do you think it's the Bills year, the Eagles year, or do you think the Chiefs and Commanders will make it to the Super Bowl? It's Mitch. Thank you so much for watching. This is OwnersBox Fantasy. Subscribe. Peace.